Hey, I'm going to be showing you my budget Bravery deck, which basically, aggro and undercards basically doesn't exist, except for playing Glide out as early as possible. But that's an aggro deck based off of a 10 drop, so it's not really that aggro, is it? So this deck in itself, you could really say, is not that aggro, but it is in a sense. You see, aggro doesn't really exist in undercards because the anti-aggro options are simply way too good in this game. If you go against Justice or Patience with an aggro deck, you basically as well surrender straight away. Now this deck is a little bit different because this deck does usually beat Patience. It still can't beat Justice. Justice is just too good at beating aggro. It is disgusting how impossible it is to beat a Justice player whenever you're trying to play aggro. I know I'm not usually an advocate for aggro, but it kind of interests me in this game since it doesn't really exist, which, again, to anyone who hasn't played undercards that much, in undercards, usually no one really plays anything for the first 3, maybe even 4 turns, sometimes even 5. So, in a situation like that, you'd think making a play on turn 1 would be pretty devastating for them if their game plan is to wait for as long as possible until they get a full hand and then start playing. It's just the advantage that gets you because you get to attack first and you get to develop the board first and all that, and no one ever expects you to do it. The thing is, the reason why people never play early in this game is because of the ridiculous power of the passives. If you're playing Kindness, then you will have to be very, very powerful in your aggressive strategies to overcome the 2 healing per turn, which is just the passive healing. Then they've got their own healing that isn't every turn, but they have to use cards for it. If you're playing Justice, as I said, 1 damage to a random one of your minions every turn, and 1 damage to your face if they've got less health than you, and since you're an aggro deck, they're going to have less health than you. So, yeah, Justice is basically insta-killing everything you put down, because everything's really small, because it's an aggro deck. Oh my god, stop. Then there's Patience, which, well, freezing everything you play straight away and then dealing 1 damage to it is extremely good for anti-aggro. The reason why this deck is a little bit better against Patience is because there's multiple targets for the freezing, and Patience usually only hits 1 target, but Patience still is a brutal matchup for this deck. Aggro is never really going to be that good in undercards, but this so far has been the best aggro deck I've made. And let me tell you, if you're looking at this confused, I don't blame you, because basically nothing. Wait, dismount. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, okay. 3 of the cards from what this deck was originally have been kept, and the other 22 have been replaced. That's how much this deck has been changed for me. Originally, my idea was the best way to go about aggro was to go for a kind of crowd buffing deck where I use Nice Cream Guy, which is a 6/3/6 or a 5/3/6. I've forgotten. It's one or the other. That gives everything you play +1/+1. And Catty 7/4/6, which draws you a card whenever you play a card. Sorry, a minion. But both of those cards I thought would be amazing for aggro. You've got a constant card drawing engine, and you've got a constant extra stat boost and everything. And then I ran the Temi package. But that deck was actually way too slow. And I never got Bravery's Patience to go off on that deck because the card draw was too good. Everything was too expensive. It honestly wasn't playing like an aggro deck, even though the most expensive card was a 7 cost, which in undercards, where your most expensive card besides Kara, because that's a 99 cost, is sorry, not a 99, a 40 cost. Besides Kara, the most realistic, highly costed card in this game is Azrael with 18. 7 is not that high in comparison. But anyway, let me just talk about how this deck works. It turns out the best way to go about this is to actually take advantage of Bravery's passive. I basically never use Bravery's passive because, well, it has so much potential, but it just never seems to work out. However, in this deck it does. Cheat cards in this game are generally pretty weak, but here, the cheat cards will actually save you here, because you need to get that passive to go off, and you need to empty your hand as fast as possible. So, your ideal starting hand would be 2 tiny Froggets and a Monster Kid. Charles is also a great card to have in your starting hand, because you're probably going to buff him with the Monster Kid. Besides that, the rest of the other cards aren't usually that great to have in your starting hand. I was not running Assault in this deck originally, but I put in 3 because, 1, they're not that expensive, and 2, when I was playing this deck, I was reaching the bottom of my deck and dying to fatigue way too often. And finally, you may be wondering, this is definitely the weirdest choice in the deck. Why the hell am I running 2 Gasters? I know Gasters like in all my decks, but in this one, a can't attack 5 cost that puts cards into your deck that you won't get straight away, and you've put him in your aggro deck, especially when he's a 5 cost, which is the most expensive cost in the deck. Yeah, it's a weird choice, but again, I'm worried about fatigue. These adding extra cards to the deck means that I'll have more cards in my deck, so I'll get to fatigue slower. And on top of that, when I do get to fatigue, I'll constantly be getting Gaster Blasters, so I should be able to kill my opponent before he fatigues me. So yeah, the Gasters are a strange choice, but so far they've worked out. As for the artifacts to use for this deck, usually Draw would be good for an aggro deck, but Draw messes with the getting the passive off, so it's actually not a good idea. So I'm running Mines. There's not really any synergy with Mines, it's just extra damage, which to be honest seems to be the best way to go about it. Poke is not that good, and I couldn't really think of anything else except maybe give some monsters in your deck +1/+1 that artifact, which I don't have and I don't plan on getting because I can't think of any decks where I'd want to use it. Yeah, you'd either run this deck with Mines or Poke and the artifact that gives some random minions in your deck +1/+1. It's one of the other. Okay. The one problem with having Gaster in the deck is that if you get him in your starting hand, then just I don't know why I spent so long talking. I should have known the first person to go up against would be a Justice, and this is also the worst hand I've had in a while. I've given this deck multiple test games, and I've never had a hand this bad. I mean, I guess we've got Charles and Monster Kid. It could be worse. We have no Tiny Froggets. That's going to hurt us. Wait, he's running Aaron? Like, I'm running Aaron, but that's because he has synergies with the deck. I can't see how Aaron would have synergies in a Justice deck. Well, he doesn't have synergies, but it's just a strong stat line to build off of. With all the buffs, that's kind of important. Hate to do it, but it saves the other Big Bob, which is currently a bit more valuable. Yeah, see, we've got a big advantage of him now. He's lost a lot of health. Oh, and he can't deal with the Big Bob. Okay, never mind. Big Bob has actually not worked so far. I knew he would work eventually, which is why I haven't taken him out of the deck. I've still got 2 copies in. But I haven't got Big Bob's effects to go off yet, and now it's going off. Oh! You see, this is the one where you can win if you go against Justice, and that is exploiting their passive with Big Bob. You need some luck, but if it goes off, oof, you can really put them on the ropes. Why didn't you target the one with 2 health? He's going to survive with 1 health, but he's not likely to stay like that for very long. In fact, let's just do this first, see what we draw. We've got a lot of gold. He is very unlikely to be able to save himself. In fact, we're going to do this to draw a card. There's still 1 mine in his deck as well. So even if we can't kill him, somehow he wipes the board. Oh, is he going to kill his own minion? Is he not going to kill that? He's not going to survive if he... Oh, he can't kill that. Well, that was a quick game. It probably isn't that long, but I'm going to upload this video now, just because I realised I rattled on a little bit at the beginning, so I might not have time for a second game, but I will do a second game in a second video, so see you then, bye.